everyone, I'm Jennifer. I've got my co-host with me, Danushki, and we have our next Data Learns. Danushki, do you want to introduce our guest today?
Absolutely. So today, as our guest and our guru of the day, we have Anya Prosvetova. Anya is a Tableau and Alteryx consultant at the Data School. She is also the new Tableau Data Dev Ambassador. She's in that new class of ambassadors. And I actually got the pleasure of meeting Anya in real life at the Data School in 2019. Oh my gosh, that sounds so far away, so long ago. So yeah, Anya, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to learn some exciting metadata API juju from you.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me, Jennifer and Nishki. And I think it's a great initiative to have members of community share their knowledge. And I'm really excited to talk about Metadata API. It's maybe a less known feature of Tableau, of developer tools, but I think it can be really useful and open up a lot of opportunities to discover what you have on your Tableau server and how you can work with this. Yeah, so I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you, thank you. And you've been such an immense help for me, and your blog, which I'm sure, if you, with your permission, we'd be happy to share for anyone that wants to dive deeper, has questions. You do a fantastic job walking people through it. Me being someone that had no idea what metadata was prior to being kind of tasked with, hey, can you find some information out for us? I was able to kind of read up on your blog. So yeah, I'll be happy to share that out. But with that, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, no,
Go ahead.
I'm very glad to hear that it was useful, because I was in the same exact position. I had no idea what this thing is, and then I started just digging further. So let me start sharing my screen. Oh yeah, here we go. I know about Metadata API, but sharing screen sometimes takes a bit of a time to figure out. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Lovely. Yeah, again, thank you for inviting me and for this lovely introduction. My name is Anya, and I am from the Information Lab in the UK. I'm part of the Data School, and I'm currently working there as Tableau and Alteryx consultant, and I'm also the part of the most recent cohort of ambassadors, is Data Dev Ambassadors. And just to introduce myself a little bit and make maybe the topic of overall Tableau developer platform, but also metadata as a part of it, a little bit more approachable, I just wanted to share about my background. So I'm coming from background in economics, art history, and photojournalism, a little bit of a mixed history I have here. But you can see I don't have any background in computer science, and you don't have to have a degree in computer science, a lot of knowledge about coding or anything like that. You can start looking into all these tools and understanding, which I did back in 2020, March, basically a year ago. I started looking more into Tableau developer tools because there was this series of mini challenges, which were great to start with different APIs that Tableau has. And since then, I started writing more about my experience working with these tools, and I was selected as an ambassador, Data Dev Ambassador, in August 2020. So you can see that it might sound a little bit intimidating, all these APIs and coding and JavaScript and JSON files, but you can really start with basics and dig deeper. And I got really interested in developer tools because I do like exploring new things, and this offers really a lot of different opportunities to start looking into new tools and new functionality in Tableau. And also it allows you to automate a lot of manual process, like we will see later with Metadata API, for example. You can automate, say, creation, my favorite topic is data dictionaries. You can get the list of all the calculated fields you have. You can really make things faster and easier using all these different tools. And also I do like solving puzzles, and we can see that sometimes working with APIs and all these developer tools might sound like solving a puzzle. You can understand where you want to be, but maybe you don't really know how to get there, and you can solve all these different things that will work or not work along the way. So that was a thing that was interesting for me. And if you are interested in learning more about developer program, I would highly recommend looking into this. I will give some useful resources at the end of my presentation, but also just to say that along the way, while I was looking into all these different tools, I learned a lot about JavaScript. I'm not an expert in any way, but I do have now some basics of JavaScript and web development that can be useful if you want to work more, say, for example, with embedding Tableau or building extensions for Tableau. And also you can use all these developer tools to build custom tools in Tableau. Like, again, we will see later on with Metadata API, you can create your own applications based on the tool you're quite familiar already, Tableau. And then it also helped me to understand how to explain complex technical concepts to different audiences. And because I'm coming from a background which is not pure computer science or coding, I had maybe similar difficulty at the beginning trying to get into the documentation for these different APIs, trying to understand what people meant when they said something, because a lot of this things might be not very clear to beginners. So I will try, and in my blog as well, and I'm glad to hear, Jennifer, that you said that it was very clear, the walkthrough. I will try today as well to be as clear as possible and make it as easy as possible to everyone to understand what Metadata API is, how you can use it, and how it can be useful for you. So that's a little bit about me and my experience with the development program in Tableau. And I talked a lot about different tools that Tableau has, developer tools. And this is a little overview and focus on where we're going to be today, the Metadata API. So you can see that Tableau has all these different groups for the tools. So you can use certain APIs to automate or integrate Tableau with different applications that you use. You can use REST API. Many people do look into this when they want to automate, for example, publishing workbooks or adding users to the Tableau server. Metadata API sits in this group, in automation group and integration, that allows you to really faster and in automated way as well, if you want to extend it further, get information about all the data sources, all the content you have on the server, and how all these things correlate and relate to each other. You can see we're not going to talk about these tools today, but you can see that Tableau Developer Platform has tools to extend Tableau, say like create new capabilities inside of them, embed Tableau dashboards, embed them in other applications or websites, and also do advanced analytics using R and Python scripts inside Tableau dashboards. So that's just a little bit of all the tools that are out there. And we're going to focus on the Metadata API. And again, if you do have any questions, feel free to interrupt me and ask along the way.
I do have one.
Sure.
Can you help me understand what is REST API and what is metadata? I stumbled onto metadata, but why explore the other two, or why metadata?
Yeah. So that's a great question, and it's a very frequent one. I was going to talk about it later, but it's a very good point actually here. So REST API and Metadata API are quite similar. They allow you to get data about information, rather maybe, about, say, users on your server, web workbooks, dashboards, data sources. But Metadata API is read-only. So, for example, you can find information about workbooks on your server, but you can't change it using the API. But the REST API, you can read and you can write back. So you can, say, use it to publish workbooks, to add users, to change even calculations automatically, remotely using scripts. So REST API has this write functionality as well. Metadata just allows you to see the relationship between content, data sources, but not change it in any way.
Okay, that helps.
But that's a very good question, because it's quite confusing sometimes when you start looking at these tools, and they do sound very similar. So let's finally get to the topic of the day. What is Tableau Metadata API? So Tableau Metadata API, as I already mentioned, allows you to get data about your data sources, Tableau prep flows, users, workbooks, dashboards, everything you have on your server, all the data sources and the content. And discovering this content, it also allows you to discover the relationship between the content and the users and the data sources you have. In other words, it allows you to track lineage. In even simpler words, which field am I using from a certain table, from a certain database, in a certain workbook? If I delete this field, what will happen with this workbook, or which workbook will break if I'll remove certain fields from this table? So that's tracking lineage, but also understanding the impact analysis. If I change something, if I delete something, if I update something, what will happen with the rest of my content? So that's the metadata API there for you to do this. And for example, here on the slides, I give this sample schema of when you are looking for custom SQL tables. So you can actually get the custom SQL query, and we can see in a second how to do that. You can see that that's my main query in this case. So I'm looking for this SQL statement. But obviously, this SQL statement has to refer to a database that I'm using. So there is this connection to the database that that I have connection to on my server. But then using this custom SQL query, I'm using it in certain worksheets. So in Tableau Metadata API, you have this concept of downstream and upstream content or data sources. So in this case, I'm using the SQL statement in the downstream worksheet. So I don't have it somewhere before. It doesn't happen before my SQL query. SQL query actually is used afterwards. The results of the SQL query, rather, are used in this downstream worksheets. And the same goes for downstream dashboards and workbooks. So you can see that it's this very simple schema shows you how Metadata API actually looks at the objects and data sources on your server, and how you can understand and read it, and think about also how to build your query to get the data that you want. And we can actually see later on how changing the order of how you query the objects in the metadata API gives you different results, and maybe sometimes you need one instead of the other.
I experienced that the hard way. Why is this different? I
think it's an exploration way.
I think, yeah.
But yeah, that it has a lot of sides and approaches. You can look at different things from different angles, and sometimes actually you do want to look at some things not from the angle you used to work when you just look at content on your Tableau server. Just very quickly to show you, to reiterate a little bit of this point, that this is how the metadata model is structured. So you have a parent object, in this case, the example of a database server, and then you can have connected to this parent object, child objects. So the database can be the actual database table, it can be a custom SQL query, can be data from Web Data Connector, from a file, and so on. You can also use a different approach at the same time. You can have an object, say like I have here a database, but then you can have an object type. So the database can be from the metadata point of view. It can be a file, and then the file has attributes. It can have ID, it can have name, it can have description. This is just a sample of attributes you can have, but there are many more attributes. And you can query just the attributes you want. Say if you want to have just the names of the files, you can query just the name without adding all these different attributes. So Metadata API is built on GraphQL. So it's a GraphQL type of API. And that means that here, instead of querying just everything about this file, you can query only the certain attributes you're interested in and get only the focus subset of this data rather than getting everything like frequently you have in REST APIs. And to summarize all these schemas, that's a very basic query. We're going to look at how we're going to write it. Further on, that's this GraphQL query that has the name. So you can, it's absolutely up to you. There is no rule. You can name it any way you want to name it. And then you are given the object that you want to learn more about, say a workbook. Then you can also filter. You can use certain arguments to filter or to somehow narrow your query down. And then you can list all the attributes that you want for this particular object. And notice, I will highlight on this one, but notice also that some attributes, they have their own internal attributes, nested attributes. So it doesn't matter, it doesn't mean, sorry, that you can just have attributes for a certain object, like just names of the workbooks, but you can also get attributes of their own attributes. And again, it will make a little bit more sense when we'll actually write the queries in a second. But that's just to show you that how the query should be structured. So you first give the object and then the attributes that you want to get about for this object. And the very important thing, how you can actually access the Metadata API. So there are several ways. Metadata API is enabled by default on Tableau Online, but you need to run a certain command to enable it on Tableau Server. You can access the Metadata API using two ways, or rather three even ways. So first, you can access it straight from your Tableau Server or Tableau Online if you do have a data management add-on activated on your Tableau Server or Tableau Online. And if you do have it, you will see this external assets section appearing on the left in the menu, and then the query metadata API link will be in the top left, top right corner, and you can access it from there. If you don't have a data management add-on activated on your Tableau Server or Tableau Online, you can still access the metadata API straight from the browser using just the modified URL for your server. So you just have the main link and then you just put /metadata/GraphiQL. And you see that here I've been talking about GraphQL, but here I have the GraphiQL, and it's not a spelling mistake. It's actually the name of the user interface that's available from the website, from your browser. We will see how to use it in a second. And that's how you can enter this user interface on the browser and start querying the metadata straight from there. So you don't need even to have any special setup and write any code. You can do it straight in your browser. And if you want to automate and somehow make maybe accessing metadata API a little bit more complex and advanced, you can use REST API. So you need to use REST API in this case to log into your server, to your Tableau Server or Tableau Online, because obviously to get access to the metadata, you need to be logged into your server. So if you want to automate access and extracting information from Metadata API, you can do it using REST API to log into a server, send the query, get the results back, and output them in whichever format you would like. So you can either write a script or you can use Alteryx for this or any other similar tools. So quite a lot of ways to access the Metadata API. So let's now see a little bit of a demo, and I have used some of the samples I already worked with, but I also included the samples based on the questions that we had on Twitter. So we will see how to answer some of these questions using the Metadata API.
Can you run through? Sorry. In
Sure.
the previous slide, you mentioned how to enable the metadata, right? Now, do you have to have any kind of special license to do that? Do you have to be the administrator, or can anyone be able to enable that?
To enable, you do have to be an administrator, yeah.
Okay.
You need to run a TSM command, so it's the Tableau Tableau management in the command line. So you just run this command to enable the metadata API, and then it starts. You will start getting the metadata. So to enable it, that's a very good question. To enable it, you do need to be an admin. To access it, you don't need to be an admin, but the results that you will see when you will query the metadata API will be based on the restrictions on the, or rather permissions that you have for you set on a certain server that you're going to look at for the metadata. So to enable on Tableau server, you do have to be an admin. On Tableau Online, as I said, it's enabled by default, so you can just straight away go and explore it. Yeah, so now let's have a look at the actual practical demo, and we will see start with very simple queries, how to get information about users on your server and the books they own, how to actually extract the custom SQL query from workbooks on your server, and also how to look at the data sources and workbooks connected to them, how to run a very simple impact analysis. And then I will show an example that was a project that I wanted to undertake when I learned about the Metadata API, and that saved a lot of time for me, and I hope it will save not only for me in future projects, but for other people, how to build a data dictionary of all your calculated fields for workbooks that you have on your Tableau server or Tableau Online. So that was a very, very useful project that Metadata was just perfect for. So let's now jump into Tableau. So this is Tableau Online that I'm using for this demo. This is the developer site that I got as a part of the Tableau developer program. So when you sign up for the program, you get your own sandbox version with all the new updates of Tableau Online. And in this case, I do have the data management add-on activated on this Tableau Online. So you can see on the left, as I was mentioning. Oh, you can't see anything.
Sorry.
Let me reshare it again. Can you see it now?
Now we can.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, this is my Tableau Online that I got from as a part of the developer program from Tableau, and it has the data management add-on activated. And that means that I do have not only metadata API available, but all this metadata is resurfaced, if I can say so, on the Tableau Online itself. So I don't even need to write difficult queries or think about the API working in the background. I can actually start exploring the content and data sources I have straight away from my Tableau Online. So for example, if I click on this external assets, on the left side, I get the list of all my data sources, and it's all the different types of databases, static files that I have on my Tableau Online, either published as separate data sources or data sources embedded in my workbooks. And for example, let's look at the infamous sample superstore. That's my first data source at the top. And you can see that I have information about the data warning information on the left side, this yellow triangle. We will see a little bit more in detail what it means. Then on the right side, further on the right, I can also see for this data source, I have 8 workbooks connected, and I have 1 data source published on my Tableau Online. And I can click on the name of this data source, and I can see again my notification here, the data warning. So in this case, it tells me that it has stale data. I can click on it and get more information here, who set it up and when it was assigned. You can see that the file type is shown here, the file path, and that it's embedded data source in some of the workbooks. Then further on, you can see that I'm using the orders table from this Excel file. And on the right side, that's the lineage that I was mentioning earlier. So you see that Tableau catalog allows you to see this straight in Tableau server or Tableau online. So you can see that this sample superstore Excel file has 8 workbooks connected, 19 worksheets in this 8 workbooks, and then 6 dashboards. And I can just go click on these different icons. Say, for example, if I want to see all the workbooks connected to this data source, I just click on this icon on the right in the lineage section, and I can see all these workbooks connected to this data source. If I go, for example, to Superstore map, I get a similar image, again, further lineage on the right side. So it shows me where this workbook sits, and I can see what tables are connected to it, what data sources are it's using this workbook, and then all the worksheets and dashboards. And on the left, you can see I'm having this detailed preview of the lineage of all the fields that I have in this data source, in this workbook. And I can see how many worksheets are using a particular calculation. So for example, this calculation 1 is used in just one worksheet. So I can click on this calculation 1 and get a little bit more details about this field. I can see that it's discrete text calculated field, it's not hidden, and because it's a calculation, I'm also seeing here immediately the formula for this calculation. So you don't even need to go into the workbook, edit it, or download it even. You can see all this information straight in the Tableau server, resurfaced by Tableau catalog. So the same data you can get using the Metadata API, but if you do have data management add-on, it just makes it much easier to get this information straight while you're working with workbooks on Tableau server. And the last bit I want to show you here, so if I go into the view and actually open this workbook, this dashboard, very simple one, and you can see that I'm getting the same data warning at the top that we saw, this yellow icon. So I can click on Open Data Details and get similar information, similar details on the right side now about this workbook. You can see which fields I'm using. I'm using 11 fields from this data source. When was the workbook modified, how many views I had, and again, the data warnings presented there, so I can always see whether my data has some issues or not. And again, similar like we clicked on the name of the field in the lineage, we can do exactly the same here. We can explore the fields, just unfolding a certain field, and you can see I'm getting exactly the same data. I'm getting the calculation, I'm getting the description if there is one. So really nice way to straight from your server understand what's used from a certain data source, how it is used, and also to see the quality of your fields. For example, like this calculation 1 should not be called like that. So you can always start looking at your metadata already in the server. But that's if you have the data management add-on. So if I go back to just the main page, as I was mentioning, from the external assets, you can just click on this query metadata link in the top right corner and get to the metadata section, to the GraphiQL, to the metadata graphic interface. If you don't have data management add-on, straight ahead, just add metadata/GraphQL after the name of your server, and then you will get to exactly the same page. So before we start writing the query, just want to point some really useful sections here. So on the right, on the left side, you have the space where you're going to write your query. So at the moment, there is just this standard kind of introductory text to how to use the GraphQL. And then on the right side, which is a great feature, is the documentation. So you can actually search the documentation straight in the GraphiQL interface and just start finding the objects and their attributes and what you want to actually get from the Metadata API. And then once you run the query, your response will be visible here in this middle section. So let's now go ahead and write the first query. So let me make it just a little bit bigger. I will close the documentation for now, but you can see that you can bring it whenever you need it. Do you have any questions at this moment?
No, we're excited.
Oh,
No.
Good.
Jumping
So
in.
let me just delete that. So as I was saying, we need to start writing the query with giving the query a name. And the name can be absolutely random. There are no rules about it. It's just so you understand what this query is actually doing. So let's start.
And I will
a
share,
little bit
after
bigger.
running so many different queries, I've learned to be more mindful about how I name them.
Yes.
So that I know when I go back, I'm like, which query was that? I don't know.
I think it's like calculated fields in Tableau. You learn to name them very properly. So you can't
Query 1,
understand.
query 2, query 3.
Exactly.
Really specific.
So another thing, you have the documentation on the right side, but documentation is also, let's say, embedded in the actual writing side on the left, the writing pane on the left side. So you see, once I start typing, I get this suggestion. So it thinks that I want to write query. I say, okay, press enter. So let's call it, say, users and workbooks. So that's the name of our query. Again, there is no particular rule of how you format the name of the query. It's just a standard practice to use this so-called camel case, that you have the very first letter is lowercase, and then the first letter of next word is uppercase, and you all write it as one word without spaces, just because it's that's how it passed to the API. So there are no errors when it's passed, so don't have any spaces there. So query, user and workbooks, space, and then I open my curly brackets. And you see another great thing about this user interface, that it gives you the opening bracket and the closing bracket. And the more you will start working with the queries, you will understand that figure out all these brackets, which one is closed and which one is not, might be a little bit of a nightmare. The more you start writing the queries and the more complex they become. So that's a great feature here, that you get this pair immediately. So I just press enter and get inside the query where I'm going to start writing my querying the objects I want to understand about, and then attributes I want to get. So what do we want to know? We want to know users. So if I start typing users, I can see, you see, it doesn't even start with the users. It starts with Tableau, but I get this suggestion from the documentation. So that's how I need to refer to it. My object here is Tableau users. So I'm saying, okay. That's good. Then I need to pass the attributes. So I need to create another pair of curly brackets. Get into this next level. So now for Tableau users, I want to understand I want to get the username. Very nicely getting these suggestions. And then I want to see the workbooks they own. And so I start typing workbooks, and I get this owned workbooks. So that's how it's called in the API. So I say, okay. And then, as I was saying, the attributes can have their own attributes. And in this case, it is true. We want to get the names of these workbooks. So I open another pair of brackets, and I say name, and say I want to get the project name where these workbooks are saved, and then maybe when they are created. Yeah, you can also get that. So that's our first query. You can see it has already a couple of layers, and there are a couple of buttons at the top that you can use before we run this query. So the first button, the play button, that obviously runs the query. Then you have also history button, so you can bring out all the queries that you ran recently. So I ran quite a lot of queries recently. And then there is this button that's called Prettify. So if, yeah.
Oh,
yeah, so if you write the query and you maybe misformat it somehow, you can just click this button. First of all, if you have some errors in your query, like syntax errors, it will be red. So if I, for example, remove one bracket, should go red. Yeah, here you go. So it says that there is something wrong. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually tell me what's wrong, but it's red, so it doesn't. It's telling me rather what to. Oh no, wait, it does tell me.
Oh wow, it's a little tooltip.
If you point at certain point, not everywhere but somewhere.
I saw it too. I saw
yeah,
it.
Yeah, here you go.
It is.
Yeah, so it does show you what's the error. So if I bring the curly bracket
That's a button
back,
I haven't used very much, because I did notice when you do run the query, it sometimes will add some syntax for you.
Yeah.
But then you might have to adjust it because it assumed the wrong level. But anyways.
Yeah.
Now.
And so if I click Prettify now, it's all fine. So if you don't get this red highlight, that means that you're good to go. So if I press play, now we can see that I'm getting the response for my server. So I can see that I have only one user on my server, that's me, but then I get all my workbooks with their names, with their project names, and when I created them. And yeah, so that's a very simple basic query, but it gets you back everything that you have on your server. So all the workbooks, all the users. Imagine if you have so many users, that is just overwhelming. In my case, I can't really filter for different users, but say, for example, I want to filter for a certain project. I want to see workbooks that are present in certain projects. I want to understand what's out there. You can filter your query further. So if I go back to the query I wrote, and I can add a filter for the project name. So project name is an attribute in this case for the owned workbooks. So I just make sure that I click just after the owned workbooks object. And then I open simple bracket, simple parentheses, not the curly ones. And you see that it gives me three options here. I can either filter, I can order by, or I can check the permissions mode. So in my case, I want to filter. So I select filter. You see it's also colored in different ways, so it's easy to distinguish. And then I say filter, semicolon, and then I open another set of curly brackets, and then I'm saying what I want to filter on. So in my case, I want to filter on the project name. And also, you will not get the attributes you cannot filter by in this list. So it kind of filters it out for you. So for example, in this case, I can filter on the project name. So that appears in the list. So project name, and then again, colon, and in the quotation marks, I will say I have a project which is called B2C.
And while you're typing that, so you need to apply the filter at the level that owns that attribute, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So filter issues, that makes sense now.
Exactly. Yeah. So you don't put it to the attribute itself, but you put it to the object with this attribute, but you mention the attribute in the filter. Yeah. So that's my name of the project. And now when I click the run button, I will get the workbooks, you'll see, only from this project. I'm not getting anything. If I zoom out, you see I get significantly fewer workbooks. So it's much nicer to work like this if you want to focus on, say, a particular user or particular project. You can use this filtering functionality. So that's quite a nifty thing here.
Is this a way, so pagination, I don't know a lot about, I might be jumping ahead here, but if, for example, our server, we have I don't even know, maybe 30 project levels. I wanted all of our calculated field names. I imagine that would be probably too large to query. So is this one way to tackle it, looking at the project level at a time, or is there other ways to achieve that?
Yeah, you can do it like this. I would maybe, if you want to get everything in one go, I would maybe write a script, to be honest, and just get everything like that straight away in the script, because I think if you have a lot of things, if you have a lot of content, then I imagine if you have a lot of workbooks, you have even more calculated fields. So yeah, I think writing the script will be a little bit faster and leaner way to do that. And then you get the JSON file at the end, or you can convert it into a table and then use it in Tableau to visualize it or somehow analyze it further. Might be even better because you have everything in one place, and then you can in Tableau filter or yeah, analyze it and slice it in the way you want, say by project or by workbook or by owner.
But is there a limit to how many lines you can get in terms of your return? Do you know?
I actually don't know exactly the number of lines, but definitely in the code you can deal with this pagination, and you can get just kind of go from page to page and get the data from it every page. Yeah.
Okay, so I need to learn that. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I think that might be a little bit easier way to do that.
Okay.
The next thing I wanted to show, very quick query, and I think Jennifer, you used it, you kind of started from that, and that's actually one of the things first thing I checked when I learned about the Metadata API, is getting the custom SQL. So I will cheat for this one, and I actually will paste it. Ooh.
It is a very fun query, and it's a bit wowing because this is not something, if you know Postgres, this is not something that you can get. And so it was fun to show my team, look, I've got your SQL code.
Exactly. And I did struggle on one of the projects with trying to figure out what was the query that's used in the workbook. And if you had this situation before, you have to download the workbook and somehow get inside of it to get it. So knowing that you can do it with Metadata API in just 5 seconds, it's really amazing. So in this case, I'm querying the custom SQL tables object, and I want to get the name of this object, whether it's certified or not, and the actual query for this project. So here for this table. And so you can see that I already have 2 queries on the left side in this writing pane, and you can have as many queries as you want. But when you have more than 1 query, if you click on the play button, you see that you get the list of all the queries that you have there already, and you're able to choose which one you would like to actually run. So I want to run my custom SQL. And you can see I have only 1 custom SQL used in the workbook, so I'm getting the data that I was asking for. Oh no, actually now I have a couple. I have the name of this query. I have the feature that tells me whether this data source is certified or not. And then I'm actually getting the exact query that I'm using in the dashboard. So that's a really nice way to not only understand whether you have custom SQL queries in your workbooks, but also get the query itself. And here it's very short one, but sometimes it can be very complex. So instead of trying to figure out where it's saved, you can just get it straight away in the server. So that was, very eye-opening experience when I figured out that you can do it very quickly with Metadata API.
Yes, very useful.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to show here is how to get different, and that was actually based on what we talked about before, Jennifer, how to get different tables used on your server from a database and see which workbooks are connected to different tables, and just how you are connecting to what kind of content is connected to this database. So again, I will cheat just a little bit so we save time on typing. So this query is called tables and databases. And again, just to get a little bit of a subset of my data sources here. I'm looking only at one database that's called My Playground. So that's the filtering here. And then I have databases as the object that I'm querying. And then I want to get the name of this database, the connection type, and the tables. And for each table, I want to get the name. And if I say remove the name, I think that should run, but update it automatically. So if I just if I bring the name back.
Doesn't like you right now.
Yeah.
Is it because of the brackets?
Yeah.
So 1, 2.
That looks right in terms of the filter, right?
Yeah, but oh,
this
maybe
is where it gets finicky and tends to be discouraging.
Yeah.
You look at it and go, what am I doing wrong? And that's where I sent a message to Anya.
Oh. Wow. Wait. Yeah, that should be correct.
Yeah, I'm looking at your other filter, and it looks like that would be the same syntax.
Okay, let me remove the
filter.
The filter.
And now it will work, of course. I really see that filters can be finicky, but either way. Huh.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It was at a different level, exactly.
That's right. Yeah. There it is.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was running into. I'm like, why? I'm typing it exactly. There's colons, there's brackets. Okay, so that's a big hang up. I'm kind of glad that happened.
And I did check this query. So yeah. Here it is, copying and pasting. Never. Always check what you copy and paste. Yeah, so in this case, you will see that I get the database that's called My Playground. It's a SQL Server database. And then I have 6 tables used in different workbooks on my server. So that's a good starting point. So then I want to see which workbooks are actually connected to this tables. So if I have for this database, I have name, connection type, tables. So I want to get workbooks. So if I start typing workbooks, I get this downstream workbooks object. I wonder if yeah, I want to see, for example, the number of workbooks that I get connected to. So if I start typing total, no, sorry. First, let's run this one. So I'm not getting anything because I'm not asking for any attributes for downstream workbooks. So let's get the name, for example, for the downstream workbooks. Now, if I run it, I will get, let's see, I will get again the same database type, and then I get the tables. And for each of the, I have the tables separately, and then I have downstream workbooks, the list of workbooks separately. So I don't really see which table is used in which workbook because I'm just querying the attributes of the database. It doesn't really, obviously, it doesn't understand what I want to get. The logic here is that it gives me the name of the table, the name of the database, the table, and then just the overall connected workbooks. But if I take these downstream workbooks and put it into the tables. So if I start typing, let me start maybe with workbooks. So to limit it, downstream workbooks and the same name. So if I run this now, I will see a different picture. I will see again my database, but then I get my table and the related workbooks to this particular table. So you see, that's what I was talking about earlier, that when you you need to understand the level at which you add the attributes. So if you add them after the tables as a separate attribute, it just will give you the names, but won't give you the connection to each individual table. But here I'm actually looking at the workbooks that are connected to, say, like this coffee fact table. There are 3 workbooks connected specifically to this table. So
this
that's
query. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
And then this query
no.
becomes so powerful because for our purposes, then we get to be in control of the data that we're using in connection with our server. Now we know every workbook, what the table connections are. The table gets moved, deleted.
Exactly.
We know what the impact is. So it's really a simple query, but super,
Yeah.
super powerful.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can also say, for example, for example, you have the downstream workbook, so you want to get the exact names of the workbooks. But I also want, instead of the names, just to get maybe the number of all the workbooks that are connected to it. So if I start typing the workbooks, so maybe you already came across it, but there are these objects that are the actual objects, like downstream workbooks, but there are also objects that have the connection word at the end. So here I have downstream workbook connection. So that just gives you the number of the objects. So if I select this connection,
The count.
it gets the total count attribute. So now if I run this query again, you see I'm getting this number here, just telling me that there are 3 workbooks connected to this table. I still left the downstream workbooks with the names, so I'm still getting this output. But that might be useful to just have a quick maybe overview of, say, you have a database that you're going to change, you're going to update, how many workbooks you are connecting to this, how many dashboards you are connecting to this database. And then see maybe if you want to do some kind of audit, which databases you should look into first, because they're feeding more database dashboards or workbooks. So that can be also another way to look at it.
Nice.
So helpful. And I feel like you solved a couple of my hangups and reasons why I was having trouble with just like watching you run your queries. So this is fantastic.
Yeah, sometimes you just it doesn't work, and yeah, it takes a little bit of time to figure it out. But yeah, now I also learned today that if you hover at a certain point, you will get an error displayed there. So that's
You're
very
patient long enough. Yeah, that's really helpful because I think some of my issues with syntax, which now I've discovered, it could be that I don't have an attribute at the right level. Now I know why when I do try to put a filter on, it's not working. So it's, again, probably not at the right level. And I'm going to try to use proof by.
No, very useful. And the last thing I wanted to show is this. Again, I will just copy paste. Hopefully this will work this time. The query that I wrote when I was building the data dictionary. So in one of my projects before, I had an issue that I worked with a lot of workbooks that I haven't built, and they had a lot of calculated fields that maybe were duplicated, maybe were working, maybe were not working, and sometimes they were updated and I didn't know what was updated. So it was a little bit of a complex issue. But I spent a lot of time manually going through the workbooks and trying to compare what was changed and maybe what calculation was removed or what was added. And then when I learned about the Metadata API, I said, well, that's the perfect use case. I have to try it. So I wrote this query. Again, it's just the starting point, and that's how I approached it. But you can expand on it and add more attributes or more objects. But you can see that I'm querying straight here the calculated fields, their names, description, if there is any, the data types, the formula, also which fields are referenced by this calculation. So again, if you look at the database and see, I want to remove these fields, you can check whether these fields are actually used in any calculations already. So that can be useful. I'm looking at the upstream databases, so where the fields that are used in this calculation are actually coming from, where they use, so the worksheets, the downstream dashboards, the workbooks, who owns them, which projects they belong to, and if there are any data warnings. So that's all the things I wanted to see in my data dictionary. So I just will run it to show you how the response looks like. It might take a little bit of time because it's not filtered. But in this case, once I ran it, I just copied the response, which is just a JSON format response, saved it as a JSON file, just in a simple text editor. And then I created the data dictionary, which I will show in a second. But just to show you that in the response, you see I'm getting this actual formula, all the names of my databases, where this is used, and all the projects and all the tags as well for the project. So this is the query that I wrote for the data dictionary that I wanted to build, and that's an example of the data dictionary that I built using the output from this query. So you can see that it's quite straightforward table format. You can see the workbook names, the calculated field names. So if I scroll a little bit further down, so let me remove this filter, I can see the remove filters for some reason here, but yeah, so you can see now that I'm getting all the formulas, and you can see also all the comments in the formula in the calculated field are also displayed in this field. So very, very useful if you want to understand also why a certain calculation was built, if people left the comments in the calculated field. I also added kind of like a sign telling me whether there is a warning, a data quality warning for the workbook, for the data source that this workbook is connected to. So if you have this I sign, that means that everything is okay. And if you hover over it, you actually get a little bit more details about this particular formula, about this workbook, and whether this formula, this calculated field, is referenced by another calculation. So you can see that this one is referenced by the calculation that's called total for click-through. If I scroll a little bit further down, just to get some workbooks, yeah, here we go. So this, for example, sales by state, we saw it at the very beginning. It had this data warning, and the sign here tells me that this data quality warning and data is stale. So that's a very quick way to understand whether your workbooks are connected to correct and the complete data sources, and maybe if something's wrong, just to go and check why it's happening. You can also based on the query I had, add these filters to make it easier to work through all these different calculations, to look at the different projects, data sources, different owners. You can also check the quality of the names of your calculations. So for example, if I search for the calculation 1, just to check if anyone named calculations like that. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, there is one that's called calculation 1. Again, you can also search if there is something like copy. I don't know if I have anything like that. No, I don't. But if you do have something like sales copy, final, that's a good way also to do an audit of how you name your fields and how keep your data format, let's say so, in order. So that's an example, a very real use case of how you can actually write a more complex query and build something on top of it. And as I said, I did a very simple approach, in the sense I just copied this JSON response and built the workbook on it. But obviously, if you want to automate the process, you can use even the Python script, for example, in Tableau Prep. Host it on your server, schedule it to run. It will run, say, every day or so, or whichever frequency you want, and will update this dictionary. So every time someone looks at it, they will know that that's the most recent version. So you don't need to think about updating it manually. But that's just a use case of Metadata API in a little bit of a bigger on a little bit of a larger scale, let's say, so how you can use it.
Which I can't wait to run this and see how many calculation 1s we have.
Exactly. Yeah, you can actually add this into the filter, I would think so. and just see just the calculations that have this this name. So that can be awesome. Very quick way to do that.
Very fun.
And just to finish it up, I just want to share a couple of resources, and I will send you the links afterwards so you can post it as well next to the video. So there are some resources from Tableau where you can read more about the data catalog. So that's the resurfacing of the metadata in Tableau Server, Tableau Online. The Metadata API documentation, of course, to start with and understand better how it's structured and how it works. If you want to learn more about the GraphQL, I would recommend the main website for that as well. And obviously, I would really encourage everyone to join the developer program that Tableau provides, because you get the sandbox and you can also get access to Slack channel where you can ask questions about all the different APIs and tools Tableau provides and get answers from Tableau developers team, but also from the community. So really great resource. And also some community resources. So I wrote a couple of blogs on the Metadata API and building data dictionary. There is also a very nice blog on how to access the Metadata API using Alteryx, so to automate it using Alteryx by one of my colleagues, Andre. And also there are quite a lot of tutorials on YouTube. So if you search Tableau Data Dev on YouTube, you will get different videos from Tableau conference and just from maybe webinars and some community events where they talk about how to use different APIs, including the Metadata API. And just to bring to your attention some of the events that are happening. So currently there are data dev bingo challenges running. So there is no deadline as far as I remember, but there are all these different mini challenges based on different levels of expertise, and you can pick different tools that you want to practice with, including the Metadata API, and win some prizes when you get the bingo crossed over. So have a look on the website and start maybe building some of these projects to learn more about the tools, but also to win some nice prizes.
Yeah.
And the coming up event is the first ever dedicated data dev conference or event by Tableau. So that's going to be on the May 20th, Data Dev Day, and the registration is open now. So feel free to head over this link on Tableau website and register. It's going to be a really nice, very varied event. So for people who are just starting to people who are using Tableau developer tools in enterprise level. So really diverse and open to everyone to join. And obviously, I'm very happy to answer any of your questions afterwards. Anytime if you start working with the Metadata API and get stuck somewhere, feel free to reach out either on Twitter or via my website, via my blog. And if you have any questions about also other developer tools, I'm also happy to answer.
Thank you. You're so fantastic, by the way. Thank you so much. I love all the resources, and I can't stress enough your blog is definitely a good starting point. So yeah, we really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for putting all of this together.